City of Ann Arbor. And we are very excited to launch this program that Jan and I have been working on for quite some time now. It's the Ann Arbor Area Commercial Solar Program. So the program will be serving commercial, institutional, and multifamily buildings in Washtenaw County, helping to reduce the complexity and ease the transition to exploring solar on properties. Just to give you a quick lowdown of the agenda, I'm going to talk a little bit at the beginning about the why we are doing this and the goals of the program, after which I'm going to give it back to Jan Culbertson, who you just heard from. She is an architect and the leadership chair of the Ann Arbor 2030 district, and she's going to talk to you more about what technical support is available, what the website looks like, what resources are available to you, etc. After that, we are going to hear from Chuck Hookham. And Chuck is the executive director of North Star Clean Energy Company and president of Arbor Consultants, which is a local engineering firm. And he has over 42 years of experience in all forms of energy generation, transmission, distribution, and storage. So Chuck is one of the technical experts that's going to be helping commercial entities, and he's going to talk to us for a little bit. And then we're going to hear from Todd Parker, who is the director of programs for Michigan Saves, which is the nation's first nonprofit green bank. And he will be talking about commercial financing programs and ways to get involved there. So that said, why? Why are we doing this? Both the city of Ann Arbor and the county have goals. We have big goals. The city of Ann Arbor has an 820 plan with a goal of a just transition to community-wide carbon neutrality by 2030. Our renewable energy goals in the city are powering our city with 100% renewables by 2027. Resilient Washtenaw is the county's climate action plan, I should say, and that calls for net zero county operations by 2030 and countywide by 2035, with renewable energy options accessible to everybody. So there are multiple pathways to powering our communities with 100% renewable energy. Ownership of generation, which usually means solar, for those who are able to own it, has some significant benefits. First off, financial payback. Solar pays for itself in commercial situations, oftentimes relatively quickly, as you are able to access federal tax incentives and take depreciation on the project. And then it significantly can reduce your building operational costs. Going backwards. Thank you. It can also provide very efficient delivery of energy. It's on site. There's no transmission losses from distant generation. It can be done now, which helps address some of the climate emergency and some of our goals in terms of generation within our footprints. In addition, it promotes local economy and jobs and industry in the renewable generation industry, and can, if you're a commercial entity with climate goals, can help fulfill some of those climate goals and highlight and be able to market them. Next slide. So we have in the city of Ann Arbor been working on a residential solarized program, which has been wildly successful. The Solarize program has helped residents within Washtenaw County access solar by driving down costs and reducing complexity and barriers to adoption of solar, helping them learn about solar in safe ways and facilitate the entire process. We've seen over 500 installations in the residential sector in 3 years of the program. And that has resulted in over $16 million in energy cost savings over when you consider the 25-year warranted lifespan of solar panels. Next slide. So this is ramping up solar throughout our community. This is just a scatter plot map of the solar that's gone up within the city, and then the solar that's come up through the program outside of the city. We don't have permitting data outside the city, but you can see it's spreading, and it's spreading far beyond this map as well. Next slide. However, the commercial, so the bar graph on the right here is shows the number of residential, public or nonprofit, and commercial sector solar installations that have gone up over time in Ann Arbor, and the blue being residential. So you can see that the residential sector is the massive chunk of how much new solar is coming up in our city. But on the left, you can see the outsized impact that both commercial and public or nonprofit solar generation can have, namely because of your great big roofs. So we would like to see that impact grow. So just to summarize the goals of the commercial solar program, both for us and for businesses. For businesses, the goal here is to provide third-party assistance with screening your property, obtaining bids for solar, doing some financial analysis to determine payback times and operational costs, and importantly, some post-installation bill review so you can understand how your system is producing and what your bill looks like, which can be kind of confusing. It should increase your comfort with the process of investigating solar and reduce the complexity and the time required from business owners. For the city and the county, our goals of the commercial solar program are to help meet our clean energy and our climate goals, also to help economic and job growth in our region, and to help reduce costs for commercial entities in order to improve the business landscape in the county, because owning your own generation will help reduce your operational costs of your commercial enterprise. So with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Jan Culbertson, who is going to tell you a lot more about exactly what is being offered here.
Great, thank you, Julie. So a little bit, some of you may not be familiar with the Ann Arbor 2030 district, as familiar as you are with A20. We were established in 2018, and we're one of 23 districts across North America. There are 3 in Michigan, Detroit, Ann Arbor, and Grand Rapids. And basically what we are trying to do is support the implementation of both the Resilient Washtenaw and A20 climate action plans. And we take primarily the commercial, institutional, and multifamily sectors. We do energy, water, and transportation benchmarking by building and throughout the district. We have an energy management grant program that has $85,000 available. We have a House of Worship Green Team, multifamily best practices group, and multiple education programs. Best thing yet, membership is free for all building owners, managers, and tenants. So with that, we are hosting the website for this program, and the website connects you to the resources and provides you with the ability to request services. So I'm just going to go directly to the website so we can kind of explore it a bit. So the landing page is a description of the program. It has a quick button to request assistance, and we'll also have the recording of this webinar along with the slides. Going back up to our navigation, we have a technical assistance page, and this is where you'll start getting some information. One is sort of a self-feasibility assessment where you can click, and there are a variety of questions that you can go through. Looking at your metering, what kind of site you have, your roof, if you're looking at ground mount, carport, and also some resources if your site isn't feasible. Not every site is feasible for solar. How you can actually procure offsite solar. So with that, I'll go back to our page, and sorry for the slow website a little bit here. And then we have a form. It's a very simple form to fill out if you're interested in getting our technical assistance. And it gives you an email address to send it. And then the third key piece of what we're providing is a request for proposal template. And what the goal of this particular piece of technical assistance is some of the barriers to commercial solar as well. You know, how do I, you know, choose a contractor? How do I, you know, go through the process? And so we've tried to make it as easy as possible. We have the RFP, which is basically and I'll just pull it up so you can kind of see what's involved with it. Open up. The RFP is set up so you can download it and you can go through, and all the information that you need to review or input is highlighted. So you can just go through the whole template, and it gives you guidelines for issuing that RFP. And we've piloted the RFP on a couple of projects, so hopefully we've gotten some of the kinks out of it. And go back here. Then the other kind of list of documents there includes some specifications, and we've included specifications for rooftop, ground mount, battery storage, carport solar. So you can really go through, and depending what kind of system you're looking for, the specifications are included. And if you do apply for technical assistance, we won't complete the RFP for you, but we can advise you as you go through that piece. So, well, how do I find who to send the RFP to? We have some suggested qualifications, and there are some additional qualifications that we have in the RFP. And we are working with Michigan Saves. They have a listing of contractors that do commercial solar, and we'll hear from Todd a little bit later about you know, the qualification process. Financing resources, we have links to the federal solar tax credits for businesses, so you can get up-to-date information from energy.gov. We have links to, again, Michigan Saves, and Todd will be talking about some of their financing. Also a link, this is a new program that the House of Worship group at within the 2030 district is launching for houses of worship throughout Michigan, which allow them to procure solar without any capital up front. Then, if you want to explore, well, what does it mean to have solar on my building? We have examples of different types of solar. We have rooftop, ground mount, carport, battery storage. And if you go into these, they've been supplied by some of the solar contractors that work in the area. And what these do is they provide you with a sort of an overview of, you know, what was installed, the estimated savings, and kind of some of a description of the project. So you can go in and explore some of the case studies. And as we get more, we'll be posting more case studies for you to review. So that's sort of all of the things that you'll find, and we'll continue to update the website, and you're welcome to explore it. It's live today. So with that, go back. Trouble going back to the PowerPoint here. There we go. All right. So go ahead and explore the website, and you're welcome to complete the request for technical assistance, and we will then, we're there to support you. So the technical support, I just want to go through. The form has 4 options. You can check all of them. You can check one of them. It does not matter. The first one is sort of review of your solar feasibility. So that's going back to that sort of checklist that we had, looking at your particular site, and we're glad to kind of review that with you. Then a request for helping you put together your proposal template, your request for proposal. And then after you issue that proposal and you get back your proposal responses, we'll kind of Zoom with you or sit down with you and kind of go through the particulars, and so you can make an informed decision on which contractors to select. And then the other thing that we're providing is a utility billing and inverter review, and we'll do it with the first bill that comes from the utility, and then after a year. And this just gives you a little more confidence on how to monitor your solar and, kind of keep it healthy. We're not able to do a few things, and we're not in the business of recommending contractors or specific products. We will not, complete your request for proposal for you, but we will assist you in doing that. We won't review specific designs or installations. We'll gladly tell you, what contractor A versus contractor B is proposing and how they might differ. We also don't assist with any permitting or financing. Glad to send you to resources though. And then we're also not able to apply for your tax credits or incentives, but we will provide, again, resources for you to be able to take advantage of those things. So with that, I'm gonna pass it on to Chuck, and he's gonna talk, and he is our primary technical consultant. So if you do fill out that form, you're probably going to see Chuck, and he does, will help you with the feasibility, the whole RFP process, and then we have a couple people that will review the utility bills and your 1 year generation data. So with that, take it away, Chuck.
Thanks, Jan. Thanks, Julie. Thanks for everybody for attending this lunch session. This is really good to roll out a program like this, and I think we're all very hopeful that this stimulates some additional solar in the Washtenaw County area. Uniquely, I've been involved in solar for a long time. I got involved probably grassroots back in the day when Ypsi Solar got kicked off, and in Ypsilanti there was a big grassroots effort to build solar on the top of many different buildings in Ypsi, and that was a really successful model that Dave Strensky stimulated. I think this will have probably equitable results in what the city's doing here. I've also been very fortunate to have put solar on probably 80 buildings in Southeast Michigan, both from a design point of view and from a physical point of view, as well as on a bunch of ground mounts. And then I've listed on this first slide, we're starting to see interest in photovoltaic, which is putting solar on the top of water bodies that are not used for other things, such as a wastewater treatment pond. And then agrivoltaic, which is where some of our farming community have interest in having solar and would also like to continue to use the land profitably for growing crops. And we're starting to see the real benefits of doing that in farming areas. So maybe our green districts around the city of Ann Arbor, we can look at some of these things and see if they make sense into the future. So lots of opportunity. The cost of solar has come down quite a bit. In the last year, we've seen a little bit of a spike back up the wrong direction. I think some of the work Julie's doing to buy solar modules has really been successful to mitigate some of that supply chain. But in general, we're still positive. We think that this is a really effort. A lot of people think, well, why Michigan? Michigan's the third cloudiest country or state in the country. Why solar in Michigan? And it really kind of boils down to the fact that we are seeing reasonably good returns on sun, even if it's cloudy like today. We still see a fair amount of generation. It also is very easy to permit. And, if you've listened to anybody lately hear about things like wind in Michigan, you'll find that us building wind is not so favorable anymore. There's been a lot of pushback. And even in solar, large-scale solar has been a challenge. And so maybe we have to start aggregating commercial buildings and start doing smart things in an urban setting where we can build additional solar using rooftops and other open spaces to make things happen. So I'm looking forward to seeing where this moves us going down the road. I hope adoption's strong. Thanks for the slide switch. So this is a little bit repetitive. It talks a little bit about what Jan prescribed. There are quite a few good solar installers. Some people have heard bad news about some installers like Pink Energy didn't do a very good job. We had a couple others in Ann Arbor that didn't perform well. There are some excellent solar contractors in Michigan and particularly in Washtenaw County, and I'd be happy to help line you up with people that will help in this regard. They're very fair. They're very strong about doing work up front. They'll give you proposals. They'll work with you as a customer. And some of them even carry forward after they built a solar system and actually help you manage it. And that's really unique. So some of our suppliers are really embedded in the community and do a wonderful job. Really key is the site assessment. Being an engineer, I get involved in this a lot. And Ann Arbor, we just went through a really bad stretch with ice, and trees and ice don't get along so well. And sometimes solar and trees don't get along well either because the shade they produce sometimes shades the output of solar. So locating solar on a site or on a roof can be a little bit tricky depending on how trees are situated around the facility. So we look at that. The system design is really important. We try to tailor the system itself to match what a homeowner or business owner would like to see. There are some limitations on what we can do with respect to the distribution grid. We're very familiar with those. We help work through those challenges. And system design really is changing as we're moving forward, as solar modules get more productive, and as we can add technologies that become a little bit more available to business owners, homeowners, things like batteries and how batteries can fit the bill. How do EV chargers work? Can we install EV chargers that can work two-directional so that they can charge your house or your business and be charged during the normal time when they want to be charged and need charging themselves? So working the technologies that exist today are really starting to show the benefits. And I think we can help in this regard through this program that 2030 District's kicking off. And lastly, the thing I do a lot of work in is building and solar permits, working with DTE on category permits, all those things, the paperwork side. Managing this process is really important to understand the schedule. This is not an overnight process, and one needs to understand the pathway to get to the finish line. It can be held up on any one of these points, and it can be held up for long stretches of time if you're not careful. So adoption and success, I'm a big finish line guy. I really like to see installations working. Depends on very clear focus on schedule, and that's something that 2030 District will help in regards of. So really on the bottom there, one of the big barriers is this generator interconnection application. So there's challenges with that. In Ann Arbor, we're interconnecting with DTE Energy. They're very busy. There's a lot of people in the queue that want to have solar on the roofs. So navigating the process, making sure the filing is accurate, really important to do up front to make sure you're successful to the finish line. Next slide, please. Next slide. Thanks, Jan. So once you've decided that we're going to move forward, there's a lot of things that are part of the program, and ordering equipment is important. There's a lot of long lead time items. Switches and inverters can be a long lead to get. Finding that right installation pathway. I'm actually looking across the street at my neighbor who's going through the same process right now, trying to get installation in the middle of the storms that we're seeing. So he's really battling the timing of this all, but he's very insistent to get done as soon as he could for the summer season when we really generate a lot of electricity. So planning your installation is important. The city inspection, if you're in Ann Arbor, our building department's very now capable of this. You just have to make sure you're timing your installation to align with them to come out and inspect and sign off on the permit. Really good people to work for. And then lastly, the real typical trouble spot is the interconnect, because DTE needs to sign off on your installation. So hiring a contractor, hiring an engineer that understands DT's requirements is really important to get past this step, which is really where we're livening your system. We're bringing the system online. And that's really the last step, but it's really probably the most important to get done right. So Jan mentioned earlier utility bills. We have to tailor a solar system to match your particular consumption. There are a lot of tricks in this pathway, some of which are limiting by DTE's wire sizing or transformers voltage or whatever it might be. There's some technical requirements that have to be met. How we match up the actual sizing of the system and how much production it sees versus your demand is really showing up on the left graph, which we can really tailor to size the system to match your demand. And really what we're getting into nowadays is time of use rates. And so the sun shines really strong between about noon and 5. Guess what? That's when we can really take advantage of solar and reduce time of use because solar is offsetting so much of that afternoon load and load when you get home from work or in a business when we're getting ready to close the end of the day, there's usually a pretty good demand spike. So tailoring a system that works against what you're demanding is really an important part of the process that we're talking about, fitting a design that works for you. Next slide. So some basic questions. Do solar modules need to be maintained? Actually depends on you. If it's a fixed system on your roof and you want to have solar and it's snowing outside, you might have to get a squeegee. I know plenty of folks who do that. Typically, most folks don't maintain them. The snow will melt eventually because they attract some heat. The surface of the solar system will actually melt the snow. So unless you get a really big snow, you don't have to worry about it. The life of these modules is typically 30 years, so probably you don't have to worry about that either. So that's all good. The other elements of the solar system, so the inverters, the wires, the switches, all that hardware does have to be monitored more frequently. Very simple to do. Your contractor can help you do this. It will avoid you having to go up on a roof or have to worry about something like this. It's just really basic maintenance, and that's it. There's not a lot of extra maintenance once you put a system in place. And then, like I mentioned, that system service life. So after a system's installed, there's lots of tools that are available to help you monitor your system and make sure it's functional. And that's part of the design and will be part of the package, if you will, to get built. So with that, I hope to help folks out there, and please think about solar for your facilities. Thanks.
Thank you, Chuck. Appreciate all of that. And I am keeping track of some questions. And we will have time for questions and answers at the end. So if you have additional questions, please do put them in the Q&A, and we'll see how many that we can get to after we're through, which we should have plenty of time. So now I'm going to hand it over to Todd Parker from Michigan Saves to talk about what is Michigan Saves and also how they are partnering with us.
Thank you, Julie. And thank you, Jan, for driving my presentation. I appreciate that. So if you are not familiar with Michigan Saves, we are the nation's first nonprofit green bank. We were formed back in 2010. And since then, Michigan Saves has been providing low interest financing and clean energy improvements for both residential and commercial customers. We promote accessible, equitable, and just investments in energy efficiency and clean energy in support of a healthy and thriving community. That is the mission that we are dedicated to doing. Since our inception, $450 million through the end of last year, saving a boatload of carbon emissions in the process and supporting over 9,000 full-time jobs through our financing. You can see the stats here are all very impressive. We serve a lot of people, have a lot of authorized contractors for both solar and energy efficiency improvements within our network. And we operate with a loan loss reserve fund, which is how we support our network.
Has anybody else lost Todd's volume?
I have. Time.
You've lost my volume.
Oh, now
Yeah.
you came back. You went out for a minute, but you're back now.
Oh, yeah, my connection is unstable, which is surprising considering I'm the only person here. Next slide. So, as I said, Michigan Saves provides both residential and commercial financing. In this case, commercial financing, we provide through our network of authorized lenders, equipment financing agreements, loans, and leases, beginning at $5,000 upwards of $2 million or more. Michigan Saves generally works in that market that is less than the PACE market, the property assessed clean energy market. So those smaller projects that are in that $5,000 to $2 million range is our bread and butter. Our program is available through for all non-residential customers. So your businesses, your houses of worship, even your public entities are available to use Michigan Saves financing. And right now our commercial rates are beginning at 8% and can go up from there. We are in a rising interest rate environment, so rates are changing pretty frequently these days. How about we go backwards a couple of slides there? Now you can go forward one more slide, if you could. So in addition to our network of authorized contractors, we also have a network of authorized lenders that provide Michigan Saves financing. We have 5 that are working on the commercial side. The local lender for Washtenaw County is actually True Community Credit Union. This is the credit union that formed after the merger of Washtenaw Federal Credit Union and CP Credit Union in Jackson. So if you're looking to recommend a local lender for folks in Ann Arbor, True Community would be the one to go with. So as has been mentioned already, we maintain a network of authorized contractors that are promoting Michigan Saves financing. We have over 20 solar contractors that serve Ann Arbor, and you can find those in our authorized at our website in our search table. We do some basic due diligence on contractors in our network. We make sure that they're properly insured, that they are their businesses are in good standing with the state of Michigan. Occasionally, we will check that they have electrical licenses or building licenses, to make sure that they can install and service what they say they're going to do. One of the best features of our contractor search table is that we also incorporate customer reviews. So you can see how other customers are reviewing these contractors, what kind of comments you're providing, and so forth. So I encourage you to look at that search table. You can search by zip code, you can search by service, and then take a look at the contractors that are providing solar in Ann Arbor and what kind of reviews they're getting. It's a great resource for you, whether you use Michigan Saves financing or not, is to look at our search table and see which contractors have the best reviews. Next slide. So one of the biggest things that happened recently that many of you are probably familiar with is the Inflation Reduction Act that Congress passed last year. The IRA, as it's known, has invested or plans to invest over $60 billion in clean energy and climate resilience improvements and measures over the next few years. And through the IRA, solar tax credits have been reestablished and in some cases expanded. As you see here that there are now commercial solar investment tax credits of 30% for projects under 1 megawatt. And those would potentially include bonuses for projects that are sited in lower income disadvantaged communities, low income buildings, or other types of focus areas. So maybe some bonuses in addition to the tax credit. But most importantly now, the tax credit is actually being adjusted and made available to entities that don't have a tax liability. If you're a business, you pay taxes, you have a tax liability, you qualify for a tax credit. If you're a house of worship, you don't have a tax liability. So traditionally, houses of worship have not been able to qualify for tax credits. The IRA has now created a mechanism where that tax liability can be monetized for those entities through what they call a direct pay option. This is where eligible entities, including municipalities, can receive the credit as essentially a tax refund. So they get the benefit now of that tax credit in direct refund to them. There's also an option for that tax credit to be transferred, if you will. So the entity can potentially sell that credit to another taxpayer for cash. This may help facilitate some tax equity investing or make it a little bit easier for tax equity investing if that nonprofit can monetize their tax credit. One issue that has been raised with us is a low interest loan product that kind of bridges the gap between loan origination and customers receiving their direct pay refund. When you do your taxes, that's kind of a lagging indicator, right? You may install your equipment this year, but you don't file your taxes until next year. So you won't get your refund until next year. So there is, we're looking at a loan product that allows customers to bridge that gap between when they expect to get that lump sum refund and the loan payments that they're making today. So that is in development, more to come on that later this year. Next. Yeah, there we go. Thank you.
Fantastic. We are all so efficient that we have finished with plenty of time for questions and answers, which is fantastic. So I've been monitoring the chat, and I've answered some of you with specific questions sort of independently, but I'm going to elevate some of these to the panel so that we can address them here where everyone can hear. So we have one question that is, as a new solar contractor, how do we get notified about new RFPs? And I'll take a quick stab at this, but then give it to Jan and Chuck. So we will be referring people, as Jan and Todd said, to the Michigan Saves Contractor Network. They have vetted contractors that they have vetted for licensure and insurance and done some QA with. And so folks will be able to get their RFPs sent out to whomever they would like. We also on the website have some case studies from installers who have expressed interest in participating with the program, and you can kind of take a look at those. If you are an installer and you would like to submit some case studies and you are a Michigan Saves affiliated installer, please feel free to reach out. We would be happy to add more case studies to the website for people to take a look at. And then Jan, Chuck, do you want to add anything there?
I think that's fine. If most commercial buildings and some municipal and so forth that do publicize when they release requests for proposals, and I'm open to possibly, if people want to, we could post opportunities on the website, and obviously people are not wanting to get inundated with with requests and so forth, but if owners and or design professionals want us to do that, I think we could arrange to do that.
Yeah, I was going to say that I see two forms of my entry into the world of solar. One is where I have a solar contractor contact me and say, hey, I have a customer, a commercial building that needs your help. It's whether it's structural or electrical or whatever support it needs, siting, I can enter that way. I also have owners call me directly looking for help. And so now I'm going to refer them to this great 2030 district site to help them navigate questions I used to answer, but this will help. But from an installer point of view, I get those questions quite often. And so I usually pass on opportunities to my contracting friends, and happy to keep, expanding that network. So if I can help at all, let me know. But I do see opportunities popping up, and it's great to see more and more folks entering this marketplace. And so I think that will gain in momentum as we get more owners building. Thanks.
One other thing is, this is for the design professionals or the contractors, the design build contractors that have projects already. If you're not designing for on-site solar, shame on you. I mean, truly, it really needs to be a part of any building project moving forward. We have such a gap to fill with renewables. So as much as we can put on new buildings or renovated buildings, if you have a project, contact us. We'll be glad to help you, even if it's new and it's not an existing building. Plan ahead, and we just want to see this explode as far as the amount of kilowatt hours that are generated on site.
And the same applies to EVs, Jan. Don't forget about EVs when you're doing your new infrastructure. If you're having to add on your electrical side of your building for solar, it's very easy to add a position or two in for EV charging, and you've spent most of your money and got tax credit benefits for adding it. So leverage these opportunities while you can.
Thanks, both of you. And so, Chuck, I think this next one's for you largely. This will be different depending on the municipality that the business is in, keeping in mind that this program is offered for free for any commercial entity in Washtenaw County. So Ann Arbor, certainly I'm deeply familiar with our permitting processes, but I'm not always familiar with all of the permitting processes within the county. But Chuck, the question is the generator interconnection application different for commercial and residential applications? Certainly is in Ann Arbor, but I'll let you answer that.
Yep, so there's a cutoff. So what we call category 1 applications cut off at 20 kilowatts. So almost every home that I'm aware of in this neck of the woods is 20 kilowatts or less. So you're typically a category 1. If you're a commercial building, typically you're category 2, which goes up, I believe, 150 kilowatts cut off. So it adds a lot of capacity and it fits into category 2. The differences between the two applications are not that different. They're fairly straightforward. It's just a matter of how does it fit in the path of how DTE then moves that along. And also there's other factors, like I said, with distribution capabilities, but don't be worried too much about that application. There's a lot of help that can be given to make sure that's done right.
Perfect. Thank you. That's exactly the type of assistance that I'm expecting this program to be able to help answer. Okay, another question from Lisa. Is this the right program to explore a commercial microgrid opportunity, generating enough for some surrounding uses, which is a big topic? I'll start, and then Chuck looks like he has some thoughts. But in general, within the utility territories of DTE and consumers, they approve only the amount of generation that you used for the building that is being fed by that solar array. In other words, one solar array, one sort of building or meter. What you're sort of suggesting, the microgrid opportunity, community solar is sort of how that's defined, meaning it's generated in one place and then feeds across property lines. And that is not currently enabled with legislation in Michigan. But Chuck, any nuances there?
Yep, so I've designed a few different and installed a few different microgrids. The problem, as Julie points out, is in the current state of things, when you say community microgrid, you're suggesting that more than one person bundles together and works. And so we have community solar projects where people can own and operate that way. We don't have any necessarily community microgrids because of that utility meter aggregation. But there's certainly people looking at this. And Julie, I think you're going to jump in and say there's this little thing in Ann Arbor called a sustainable energy utility, which is SEU, which is being considered, and that will have some aspects of this as soon as the legislation supports it. But right now, individual owners, businesses can do a microgrid for sure. That makes sense in a lot of applications, particularly if you're worried about resilience and losing power. Whereas, right now we can't necessarily aggregate microgrids, but I think that'll happen sometime soon.
I agree. And when we think about microgrid, when you think about an individual building, we usually call it a nanogrid, but essentially, if you don't have battery with your solar, when the grid goes out, your solar gets shut down automatically. It's not a resilience benefit. And that is, there's a good reason for that. That's because if there are line workers, as we've recently seen, many of them up fixing lines, and you are generating excess solar at that moment. And so using some in your building, but have more than you're generating, more than you're using, and some of it's going out into the wires, those lines are live and can injure the line workers. However, if you have battery storage, now you're talking about a nanogrid or a microgrid and resilience, because instead of shutting off, your solar can go to your battery backup, put any excess generation there, and you can continue to use your solar in a power outage. So then it becomes not only a clean energy benefit and a bill reduction benefit, but also a resilience benefit. You can keep your lights on, or at least some of your lights on in your generation. So I hope that answers that question. Oh, and the SEU, yes. Ann Arbor, the city of Ann Arbor has proposed a sustainable energy utility, which is exactly this. It would be enabling residences and businesses to have on-site solar and storage and microgrid and nanogrid and microgrid with each other, because Ann Arbor would be a utility. So we'd make up our own rules, which would definitely enable it. And we'd be existing underneath the big grid, using DTE's big grid as sort of backup power for the microgrids underneath. And we've actually issued an energy options analysis, which is being worked on right now by Five Lakes Energy. And we anticipate the results of that coming later this spring. So stay tuned, fingers crossed.
One more thing,
yeah.
since we have time, one more thing to add for you, for commercial building owners. If you're thinking at all about a microgrid where you want to have battery storage brought into the equation, and you want to in the future potentially participate in an SEU or some similar program like this, when you buy the equipment, make sure you buy what's called a grid forming inverter. Don't buy what's called a grid following inverter. A grid following inverter is the point of time where if you lose the grid connection, you lose the power that's being generated behind the inverter. Whereas if you have a grid forming inverter and you've got the electronics configured in a microgrid, that's where you get the resiliency benefit. And then you can start running through offsite grid outages with your building and your battery system to sustain yourself during storms. So that's becoming a little bit more affordable. And particularly when a business looks at the cost of resilience, or when you don't have electricity, how much is that costing the business? And you start adding up the nickels and dimes, it looks a little bit less interesting to not have a battery. I mean, in other words, this is getting to be a bigger opportunity. So looking forward, remember grid forming inverter. Thanks.
Yeah, I wanted to add a couple things about especially new projects and looking at the idea of a microgrid and how you actually bring the power into the site. Because if you have a parcel, you can do primary power and feed multiple buildings with that. And what you kind of have to remember about the way solar works right now is a solar array has to be paired with a meter. So if you plan on every suite having a meter in a building, it makes it much more expensive and difficult to do solar. Why not be a building owner, manager, and utility? It's very easy to add sub-meters at this point, and you can do your own billing. The other thing is multifamily. Right now, multifamily, every unit has to have a meter. With one exception, you can get a waiver if it is a low income development. So that's something that we somehow have to change with MPSC in order to make it easier for multifamily to take advantage of on-site solar. But really think about how you're planning things up front, because if you have a parcel with multiple buildings, you could do a microgrid.
Which is why we have Chuck and Jan and assistants up front. So that's great. Here's a question that I don't know the answer to, and maybe somebody on this call does, because it's also new. What about the additional 10% 40% total credit. I think this is referring to the IRA, the new IRA tax credits. Does it have to be union installed, or does the client have to qualify? In other words, I believe that there's a 30% federal income tax credit that's been extended through the IRA, but there are some adders, and those adders have to do with where the equipment is made or paying prevailing wages and things like that. And I don't know that I know the nuances well enough. I don't know if the others on this call do at the moment.
I don't either. I'm not a tax credit expert, IRA expert. It's entirely possible that the additional bonuses or adders that you mentioned, Julie, are what could bring you up that additional 10%. I would have to do some research into law and see exactly what that is. To my knowledge, union installation is not required. That may be an adder, but I don't know that it's required.
I'm pretty sure it's a prevailing wage as opposed to union.
Yeah. Yep. Every one of my projects, we look at the bonus credit now because it is attractive. 10% added on is why not, right? But the problem we've got is that the legislation and the rules don't necessarily align right now. We don't know the rules yet. They're still evolving. So some of the things that apply, like what is domestic content? Well, if you think about a solar module, there aren't too many solar modules built in this country 100%. They get parts and pieces coming from other parts of the world. So we're still a little bit sketchy on some of the rules and how they might apply to that 10% bonus, but it's certainly worth pursuing. And there are opportunities of how to bank that or how to vet it so that you can get a third party vouching for that to get comfortable around it. So it's still kind of evolving, I think, is the best way to say it.
And you will find if you look at our bid form that we have, we do ask the solar installers to, look at those tax credits and the additional ones, and to verify if the site or or what they're providing qualifies for those items, the adders.
Perfect. And I'm sure we will continue to iterate as we gain more information. So if the federal government and the IRA makes it more clear at some point, we can always iterate the RFP to make sure that we are reflecting the necessary information. So a couple quick ones. A question from Lisa: is battery storage that goes along with solar an eligible cost in all these grants and financing? Yeah. Batteries also get the 30% federal tax credit. They are absolutely included. And then there's a question from somebody in Brighton: are there any similar programs available in Brighton? And Brighton is not in Washtenaw County for some reason, right? Is that true? Which is kind of odd. And I always think Brighton should be in Washtenaw County, but I don't have say over county lines. But Jan, do you know of any programs similar working outside of Washtenaw County?
I don't, but you certainly can use our RFP. And I don't think, if you had a few questions or something like that, I don't see us saying no. The reason why we did Washtenaw County is basically based on funding and being able to support this program in a certain geographic area. But please take advantage of our resources, and they can help you at least ask intelligent questions of the contractors, and you can use the request for proposal.
I love it. Washtenaw County and a little Brighton. Here's an excellent question. Isn't there a 1% cap on solar generation in Michigan? And is that still in effect? I will give my 2 cents and pass it to the rest of the panel, who I also knows about this. Yeah, the utilities have successfully lobbied. Well, it depends on the territory. So Consumers Energy recently voluntarily raised their cap a few more percent. So there's some room to maneuver there. DTE, I think, is still holding their 1% cap, but the MPSC has, which is the Michigan Public Service Commission, has asked them to come forward with a plan for once they hit the 1% cap. There is an awful lot of
I lost Julie's sound. Did other people?
maybe when we get Julie back, I'll just talk for a minute. But so Julie was spot on. The rules there are changing as well. I know the utilities historically were not having the amount of adoption pushing those barriers. In other words, it wasn't a case like choice where the 10% choice rule, there were 10% of participants and there was a few on the waiting list. I'm not aware of any waiting lists that are out there. But the one thing that's important to know is that the rule was put in place to protect against over adoption in areas where the distribution grid could not sustain it. So there's technical reasons to support these caps. I'm not aware of any total restriction of why a utility would not allow more, other than to make sure that we do things safely. So there's some safety aspects to this too, but a lot of people attack this rule. I'm not so much thinking it's a strict rule. I think it's just there for protectionary reasons.
Can you hear me now? Okay, good. Yeah, so what I was trying to say is that there is pushback against this 1% cap because it's sort of a blunt tool. And like Chuck was saying, from a technical standpoint, doesn't make a lot of sense. So stay tuned. The short answer is it hasn't been reached. And as long as you get interconnections approved, then you're approved and you can hook in. And if that changes, I'm sure we will all hear about it. Let's see, another question here. I'm hailing from Petoskey. I don't think we have the Category 2 generator interconnection agreement for us to lobby with that. Would that be at the city level or have to be negotiated between the city and MPPA? Chuck, do you know the answer to this?
It depends. So if it's in Consumers Energy Service territory, Category 2 does apply in Petoskey. It depends on what part of of that region is consumers versus what might be MPPA, or it could be Wolverine. So each jurisdiction that owns the infrastructure owns the interconnect agreement. So it would depend. But if it's consumers, I know that would still apply.
Thanks, Chuck. Chuck has a wealth of knowledge from all around the state, so can answer out of the box questions. And I do not see any other questions coming in. And look at that, it's 12:59 with 1 minute to spare. So thank you all for coming. Please visit the website. Please avail yourself of this free expertise that's being offered here. We're excited to work with you. We're excited to see more solar get up. We're excited to see businesses be able to be part of this growing green energy economy and lower their own operational costs. So we are here to serve. And we really thank you for joining us this afternoon and look forward to seeing more of you all. So have a great rest of your Tuesday. Bye.
And the sun is out, we are generating.
Yeah, that's right.